All right, welcome everybody. This is Michael Manjos, Chairman of the Board of Finance. Good evening. Today is March 25th, 6 p.m. This is the Budget Workshop Special Meeting of the Board of Finance. I hereby call the meeting to order. Please allow me to confirm these members, staff, and anticipated participants are present and can hear me. I will ask the moderator to confirm the digital identity of each of board member participants. Affirmative identification. Members, when I state your name, please respond in the affirmative. John Antoshevsky. Here. Steve Kirsch.
Here.
Rebecca O'Donnell.
Here.
Dan Krasavsky.
Here.
Donald in Wales.
Here.
We've got First Selectman Ken Kellogg.
I'm here.
We've got Ron Banowski.
I'm here.
And Heidi Mead.
Here.
Director. And I think Joe, is Joe on tonight? I don't know if he came in or not, but
He is
Joe
logging
Cubs is there. I see him. I see him there.
Yeah,
All right, Joe.
I couldn't find.
In case anything comes up, we'll know you're here. Terrific.
Thanks.
I hereby declare we have a quorum and call the meeting to order. A copy of the agenda and any related materials have been posted to and can be found on the Town of Monroe's website, www.monroect.org, for public inspection. This public meeting is being conducted remotely in compliance with Section 1 of Governor Lamont's Executive Order Number 7B, dated March 14th, 2020, using GoToMeeting electronic conferencing technology. Using this technology, the public should participate in real time in this meeting via computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone, using the access information set forth on the meeting agenda. Please be advised that each meeting has a unique participation information, so please be sure you have accessed the correct meeting. Notice is hereby given that only 250 participants may access this remote electronic public meeting at one time. Access to this meeting using this technology is granted solely by the technology provider on a first access basis and is not controlled by the Town of Monroe. While it is anticipated we shall not exceed participation limit for this meeting, should it appear we are approaching said limit so that any member of the public is denied access to this meeting, I, as chairman, reserve the right to adjourn and continue the meeting at a later date using technology appropriate to ensure all members of the public may participate. Please take notice it's a remote electronic public meeting. This meeting is being conducted in real time. This meeting is open to the public. That any member of the public may listen or view this meeting anonymously, that this meeting is being recorded. And while we ask you to mute your microphones unless recognized to speak, that anything you say, do, or is displayed on your screen may become part of the recording, that the recording shall be posted to the town's website within 7 days, that the recording shall be made available to the public within a reasonable time. The meeting shall follow standard parliamentary procedure. However, I ask all participants to follow the special rules. In addition, please mute your microphones to reduce background noise at any time you are not speaking. Prior to speaking on each occasion, each speaker should clearly state their name and title for the record. The use of the chat feature is prohibited and will not be considered during this meeting if in use. As set forth in the agenda, the meeting will not affect your public participation. All right, I think we are ready to go. So the first item is the review of the minutes and voting record for March 18th. So
Mike,
we want
the
to
minutes were
make
not
a
on
motion.
there. Mike, the minutes were not on there.
Ah, all right. I guess we're going
They
to skip
weren't
that
ready
then.
yet.
Perfect. We're skipping that. We're going to jump to section 3. Motion to approve special appropriation of funds not to exceed $20,000 for the Cornelia B. Rogers Memorial Fund for the Town Hall Gazebo Repair Project. Someone wants to make a motion. We'll have Ken give us some comments on this as well.
Steve Kirsch, I'll make a motion. I move to approve a special appropriation of funds not to exceed $20,000 from the Cornelia H.B. Rogers Memorial Fund for the Town Hall Gazebo Repair Project.
All right. Do we have a second?
John Ostraszewski, Vice Chair, second.
Perfect. Ken, I'll give you the floor.
Thank
You wanna
you.
speak to this?
Thank you all. So this is something we forgot to put on your regular meeting agenda last meeting, and so asked that it be added to this meeting just so we could take care of it. That's why it's on this special meeting agenda. I had asked our Public Works Director, Chris Nowacki, to evaluate the gazebo some time ago based on a whole variety of factors, and he's confirmed that the condition is in need of significant repairs, primarily the roof, the dome, the trim, some of the steps, and some of the brick walkway. This was something that we had considered. We were going to put it in the capital plan for next fiscal year. However, based upon the availability of a funding source that we thought was appropriate, and the fact that we have everything's already kind of lined up and ready to go now, and we have a vendor ready to move forward, and we also have already gotten authorization from the Historic District Commission as well at one of their meetings in March. And the town council has also approved this appropriation as well. So we wanted to just move this forward so we can act upon it immediately. The fund that this would be coming from is the Cornelia H.B. Rogers Memorial Fund, which is codified in our town code. It's actually section 60 of the town code. It was established back in 1911 with an original.
What?
1911. 1911. And you're gonna
And
like
we're just
this.
getting around to spending it.
You're going to like this even better. The initial principal was just over $2,000, I think $2,250, which remains restricted per the code and per the original intentions of the donor. So that cannot be touched. It has accrued over $56,000 in income to date. The ordinance allows the funds to be used for any town purposes as the town may from time to time authorize. So the gazebo project seems to be something that clearly meets that definition, but also probably would be, I would imagine, well within the intentions of the individual at the time who donated these funds to the town of Monroe. So the project itself is estimated around $16,000, but we thought it would be appropriate to include some contingency in that, as you know how these things go when you start getting into there. So the resolution that I asked for of town council, and which I appreciate the board entertaining as well, is an amount not to exceed $20,000. Obviously, whatever is not necessary would remain in the fund. And I think that hopefully that answers all the questions. I know, Steve, you had some questions, but I think that might
That
cover.
covers it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. First Selectman.
You're welcome.
I forgot about this one. That's awesome. All right. Anybody have any other further questions, concerns, comments? All right. Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. John?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Dane?
Aye.
Donna?
Aye.
And myself, aye. That was quick and easy.
Thank you all.
All right. So budget workshop. So we have a pretty wide open, obviously, budget workshop leads. Basically, we can talk about anything that has to do with the budget. I've got a couple of high level places. I wanted to start just to get everybody up to speed on what is in here already. I'm sure a lot of you have gone through it. But I figured let's touch on a few of these things. We'll get Ron and Ken to touch on some of the stuff. If we have any questions, I had Heidi run us a couple numbers that I thought we might be interested in, and then we can kind of figure out where we want to go next. So the first thing I kind of wanted to touch on, I think there's been a lot of conversation about medical. I know we've gotten some preliminary numbers. This is something I'm going to recommend. We're going to leave to finalize towards the end because we will get hopefully even better numbers in the next month. But I at least want us to understand where we're at today. So I thought it was as good as any place to start. Heidi, I know you've got some info on this if you want to kind of speak to this, or Ron, whichever one. It's fine.
So Mike, I'll speak to the board side, and I'll let
Okay.
Heidi speak to the municipal side.
Okay.
Okay, so the current year that we're living in right now, the rates adjusted on October 1st. So we had budgeted the increase based on the year-over-year increase of 10%, which came out to an 8% increase over the current rates because they adjusted on October 1. So the guidance that we just received a couple weeks back was that the increase will be in what they're projecting right now is in the 4% range over the current rates. So we budgeted 8%. They're saying they're going to come in closer to 4. That isn't a definitive answer yet. So that's kind of the range we're in. So on the board side, a 4%, if we used a 4% increase versus the 8, you're looking at about a $280,000 reduction. That wouldn't necessarily be my recommendation, but that would be on the high end. If you kind of split the difference and went at about a 6% reduction, it would be about 125,000. So those are the kind of the range, I guess.
Okay, yeah, because the 4 seems like a pretty light increase. I mean, I can't remember the last time we had a 4% increase on medical.
Which is why we're very skeptical.
Yeah, I love to hear good news, but I'm also just a little skeptical. So, all right. And on the town side, Heidi, just so we understand the whole package.
Okay, and we are following what the Board of Ed is doing, and we have like a range between 6% and 4%. 6% being a $52,000 cost savings up, and 4% being 104,000 cost savings. So anywhere between there, we can.
Got it. All right. So overall, we could be looking somewhere, 100 to 250 kind of range across the board, right? Round numbers.
Yeah, just, like, did you want me to give you more of a specific, like 5%?
I don't think so at this point. I mean, again, I just want to have a gauge that knowing that, what we're looking at today, there is a potential pickup here. I mean, I think from the sounds of it, there'll be some ability to cut here. But again, until we get more definitive data, which we should within the next few weeks, I can't see any, unless somebody else feels strongly, but I don't see making any moves at this point.
Yeah, Mike, an all-in reduction, based on the numbers we have right now, would be somewhere in the 175 to 380 range.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, Mike, this is Steve Kirsch, Board of Finance. Yeah, I was just looking at the 6%, right? So that puts you at 177 savings, which is a number that I'm comfortable with. To Ron, if I might, Ron, going into this year for the Board of Ed, what was put in the budget this year versus what did we actually see for this year in terms of an increase percent?
You're talking the fiscal year 21?
Yes, the year we're in, yes. So this time last year, the Board of Ed budgeted X, and with an adjustment in October, we're actually at Y. What are the? I'm not sure I'm clear on those two numbers.
We were aware of roughly what the overall adjustment was going to be this year, but what they ended up, and Ken, please jump in and correct me if I've got this wrong. When COVID hit, they just pushed off the increase. But the increase was for the whole year. They just pushed it off until October. So October's rate increase was higher than it would have been had it been put in place in July.
That's
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's correct. Their October rate was basically a catch-up rate for the full year.
Okay, that's why I was confused. Okay, thank you.
And are they saying anything about why that increases it? I mean, is it just people are using less medical because we were going less places, less? I mean, I just was trying to wondering, did the COVID affect the activity and they're factoring that into the increase? They give us any guidance on that?
Good question. I'll tell you what, let me dig up the correspondence in an email and see if that was addressed at all.
Just curious if there was any, guidance given or, what they're seeing.
Yeah, I don't recall anything in that, but yeah, Ron, if you can get your hands on it now, that'd be great. I don't recall anything, Mike.
Okay.
I still hear
Just curious.
and I still hear anecdotally that, the state plan it's a great plan and it's good for now, but there's concerns on rates going forward and things like that. So I think it's one of these things we got to continually evaluate every year.
Okay. All right. No, I mean, this is all good news. So I'm not, looking for problems. I'm just trying to understand, when
Yeah,
I get projections that are less than I expect, I'm happy, but also questions. So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when we got that revised guidance, it was obviously a pleasant surprise, but I'm still skeptical because we have not only the base rate increase. Remember, they implemented for the current fiscal year, they implemented that regional pricing model. So, what the plan does overall is one thing. Then, if they decide they want to tweak Fairfield County at the last minute, that could bite us too.
Right. Okay. All right. Anybody have any other questions there before we move on to the next topic?
I do. Rebecca O'Donnell, Board of Finance. Mike, would we want to be conservative in what we plan just because we know there's
always
going to
are typically
be
because
usage?
they give us the rate and then we always build in a little bit above that because of people can change plans. You might get new employees moving in who are in a different situations. You have a couple of, because of the changes potentially, we never typically budget exactly the increase. If they tell us 4, we're going to probably budget 5. At least that's going to be my recommendation. So, we will certainly listen to the guidance, but we always try to give ourselves a little bit of cushion on this because it is a little bit of a blind item.
Sorry, do we have to factor in any claims usage like that'll happen during the year or no?
No, this is no longer a self-insured plan, so we don't have that risk that we used to have. It's a fixed rate once they set it. So once they do give us the rate, we're locked in.
Okay.
But it's just the potential change. If somebody drops off their spouse's plan and moves on to ours, or children get added, or that kind of stuff.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mike, this is Ron. I'm just looking at the email and what was sent, and I don't see anything. I'll keep scanning it and let you know if I find anything, but nothing's jumping out at me regarding why the increase.
Why this is too good to be true? Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Well, we'll question it. All right. The other topic I wanted to bring up, because it's come up a couple of times, and I know we're talking about the Board of Ed next week, but there is one of these things that's strictly a finance issue that I wanted to throw a suggestion out there that might help us before we get into the Board of Ed stuff. I'm sure everybody's aware that we had magnet school tuition that wasn't budgeted for a few years that we ended up in a court case and we lost. And now there's been a settlement made and a structured payout for that. So in this year's budget, there is the budget for next year's expense. But there is also monies to pay out what was previously owed. Now, to me, that doesn't belong in an operating budget because it's not an operating expense for this year. Basically, it's a debt we owe from a previous year's budget that we didn't do. In previous years, the Board of Ed gave us money back. So to me, I am much more inclined to take it out of the operating budget and move it down to use out of the fund balance where the money went that the Board of Ed gave us back. And it gives us a more accurate picture of what the true expense is for this year and going forward. So it's basically, we're going to pay the money no matter what. This to me is just more transparent and better accounting of that money and not putting something in an operating budget that's not an operating expense. So I wanted to throw that out there to everybody else on the board and get everybody's opinion. on that. I know Ken took a portion of it out because it wasn't all being paid this year, which I agree with, but I think we can go even one more step further and just move the whole thing out. And we've got plenty of fund balance to use it. And that's where, to me, the money should come out of, because that's where the money went in. That was given to the Board of Ed that they returned to the town.
Mike,
Just wanted to, yep.
Steve Kirsch, Board of Finance. I thought we took the monies that the Board of Education returned and put it in specific funds for specific
That was
uses,
last
like-
year's, but this goes back a couple of years.
But wasn't the fund that went into to be used for like capital projects and carryover? Are you saying that was a general fund and is a general fund that could be used for anything?
In my opinion, I don't think this belongs on the Board of Ed finance budget. You know what I mean? I don't think it's a current year expense. Well, it's not a current year expense. Nobody's arguing that. I just don't think it should be accounted for as a current year expense. And as much as anything else, it's just, it's showing them having a higher budget than, to me, is actual.
Well, that I understand. My question is, I was sort of thinking that monies that the Board of Education had returned to the town always.
I mean, we can
came
go
with a
back over the
request that it
number
be
of
put
years.
into a specific account.
We've
on
done
their
the
behalf for a
529A
specific
accounts,
use.
right? They're not really, but they're kind of general uses, but it's long as it has to be used for education expenses, obviously. But the 529 account, I think, is what you're referring to.
Right. Okay. So
So you don't believe we should do this? Is that what you're saying?
No, I guess I could argue either way, but I recognize what you're trying to do. I want to make sure that money that's been returned from the Board of Ed and that we accepted and that we put in a fund from which they would come and make requests in the future, that we're not unilaterally taking from the fund. For
No,
a
I'm
purpose
proposing
that
taking it from the general
purpose
fund.
that we didn't intend. But if you're saying we put money back in the general fund, that's a different story.
So Mike, you okay if I jump in?
Please.
Okay, this is Ron. So the last couple years, so Steve, you're correct. In the past, it's the 10-248A fund that it was going into for capital, Board of Ed capital expenditures. That fund was tapped, I want to say 2 years ago, to cover special ed overrun, which exhausted just about the entirety of that fund, with the exception of $80,000 that's still committed for the turf field. Last year, there was a surplus that was returned to the town due to COVID for the most part, and though that was part of those funds were put into the special ed fund that exists now, along with the other fund established by the Board of Finance for emergency. I don't recall the exact name of the fund, the Emergency and Disaster Relief Fund. I believe that's the name.
That's correct.
So that's kind of I guess the short of it over the last couple of years.
So under Mike's suggestion, which of those two funds are we suggesting they come from, or are we in fact suggesting they simply come from the general fund?
I'm suggesting you just take it from the general fund.
Okay. Okay.
And
I
the
mean,
way
I just
that would
don't
be
think
handled
it's
in the
anything
budget-
the Board of Ed did intentionally. I don't think it's anything that, I believe if they had that budgeted, they would have, used the money that they returned for other things. So I don't see the point in punishing them now for something that was obviously an unintentional mistake.
And what is the value? What is the amount we're talking about?
Mike, do you want me to go into that?
Please.
Sure.
So we budgeted for next school year 197,000 for the magnet school expenses. 155 of that was initially for the settlement. So we're talking about $155,000. That was for tuitions from the 17-18, 18-19, and the 19-20 school years. So 42,000, a little over 42,000 of that was going to be is for next year's tuition. So 155 was the settlement. When we reached the settlement, we made a payment of $10,000 in this current fiscal year, and then we had 3 more payments that we are to make on July 1. So that's our first day of our next fiscal. 48.5 on January 1, 2022. 48.5. So $97,000 next fiscal year to pay for that, and then another 48,500 in 22-23 school year. So 97,000 for next year, 48.5 for the 22-23 school year. In the first selectman, in conversations with the first selectman, the adjustment was made to account for the 48.5 in the third year, as well as the 10,000 that was already paid this year.
Right. Correct.
If Mike, if I could just add to
Please.
the conversation just a little bit. I mean, it's all a timing issue, right? I mean, if we were aware of this a couple months earlier, and the settlement was secured before the end of June 30 of 2020, it would have been absorbed in last year's budget, because the surplus that was returned to the town was, would have been able to handle that. But it's
Right.
it wasn't on anyone's radar. It
Correct.
wasn't,
And that's my
it
point.
wasn't
We would have,
settled before
right.
that point. So.
So if we wanted to, if we agree here that we're going to use money from the general fund, could you go pay that money tomorrow? It doesn't have to wait on this budget cycle. It doesn't have to wait till July 1st. Am I correct or not?
You could pay it whenever you want. I mean, you could, no one's going to not take the money, but all I'm saying is when you do pay it out of the general fund. Whether you pay it tomorrow or in a year from now, it doesn't matter.
So we would
That's
need
just
to
a cash flow issue.
Yeah, we
just
would need to
appropriate it.
Yeah, we need to appropriate it. So it could be appropriated in the budget,
Right.
either, and just
Which
have
is
a
what I'm
corresponding amount of fund balance offset it. I guess, and the thought there is ultimately the taxpayers, you could make the argument, paid
for this already, right?
paid for this already. Yeah.
Right.
Otherwise, you're charging them for something that they're not getting any service for this year.
Yeah.
Which is the whole point.
I would, Mike, if I could just jump in, I would just
Please.
caution that, the town attorney, the town was involved in this settlement along with the Board of Ed. So town attorney did work pretty diligently to come up with this agreement and the staggered payment schedule. So I don't necessarily, I think the appropriation makes sense, but I would caution to not accelerate the payment schedule. And although it's
No, I mean, I have no intention of telling them you have to pay it, right?
It's probably not a lot of money we're talking about at the end, but I'm sure our treasurer would not want us to do that either.
Okay, very good.
But I think it makes sense if you want to, at least, especially for the fiscal year 22, 97,000, you would, that would bring some relief in terms of operating
In terms
budget.
of expense and in terms of taxes. That's fine.
Correct.
Correct, yep.
I'm on board. Thank you.
Anybody else, questions, concerns on this?
Yeah, hi, Mike. John Osashevsky, Vice Chair.
Yes, sir.
And I agree, to make this consistent year over year, you don't want this in the operating budget. It's an extraordinary expense. And I also agree, this has basically been prepaid by all the monies that's been returned back from the Board of Ed budgets in previous years. So it shouldn't be a burden on the taxpayers this year, and we should take it out of what we've already got in the bank.
Agreed. All right, excellent. Thanks, guys. Ron, the other kind of thing I think we're going to want to see, and again, obviously it's not a tonight question, but certainly fund balance has been a big conversation over the last year or two. Where before that we were just putting it away and burying it. So I think if we could maybe not next week because we have the Board of Ed, but the week after have kind of a analysis of where we're at, where we've been, what the guidelines are, just so everybody's in review before we get to the end of the road where we're going to make decisions on how much fund balance to use. I think if we could have that all compiled together ahead of time, that would be helpful for everybody on the board. I know we talk in generalities, but I think if we could show specifics and where it's been over the last 5 or 10 years and what the policy is and where we think it is right now. Because obviously, since we're in the middle of a year, it's a guess. We allocated a lot in last year's budget that obviously I don't think any of us feel we're going to need all of it. So that's the good news. But just to get that benchmark drawn up would be great.
Sure. The first selectman actually had me do that, before his budget was presented.
Look at him thinking ahead.
And I'll make sure, I'll make sure everything's up to date. Sure things, we have a more accurate tax collection number at this point. So
yeah, exactly. I think that's the other part of it is, again, the closer we get to this, the more accurate we have numbers. We'll have a good idea where the board's going to end up. We have a good idea what the town's going to look like, and we'll go from there.
Mike, this is Steve. Can I request that the board members get a copy of the fund balance policy? I think a majority of the board members are new.
Yeah, that's what I just asked for, was the policy as well. Yeah.
The actual policy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
as well. Right.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
No, that's exactly what I was asking for, was kind of the last history and the policy and where we're at today.
Okay.
Just so we can compare and understand, where we are against our own policy, because obviously we want to stay in that range. We've worked a lot hard on that over the years, so I want to make sure we stay within the parameters we set. All right. Anybody else on the fund balance or that kind of stuff? All right. The other area I wanted Ron to touch on, because again, it was a question that I asked, so I figured maybe somebody else is interested, but if not, at least we can have an answer. When we had appropriated the funds for the Board of Ed side, you'll notice they're listed in the book already for this year's budget. So I just want Ron to walk through that process and why we do it this way and how we do it at this point.
Yeah. So when you guys established the fund, you're talking about the 500, the two
500s, right?
At the
exactly.
end of last year for $500,000 each. Yeah, the special ed and the disaster relief funds. So the funds were committed and removed from fund balance, but that did not appropriate the funds. So they're being appropriated within the budget, and the first selectman did add those to his budget. So they're a revenue and an expense item. So there's no net impact to the taxpayers, but the source of funds is the utilization of the fund balance is the fund balance, and the appropriation is the expenditure. So if they're needed, they're appropriated. So that's basically the synopsis there.
It all sounds convoluted to me every time you explain it to me, but I get it now.
Basically,
I'll probably ask you next year
the
again.
commitment of the funds and fund balance does not appropriate them. That's the short of it.
Somebody will have to explain me the two differences in those terms, because they sure sound the same to me, but I get it. This is accounting mumbo jumbo, as they say, which is great. Okay, perfect.
So a question for Ron on this subject, if I might. Is there any likelihood that the Board of Ed is going to need to tap any of those funds for the current fiscal year, especially the $500,000 for special ed?
That's a good question, Steve. Joe, I don't know if you want to jump in, but there are some, obviously can't get too specific, but there are some things driving some costs that we're going to be watching closely going into the end of the year. So there
Yeah, I
is a
think, I mean,
possibility.
again, we're going to be spending all next week on the Board of Ed. So, I mean, maybe we can ask them to come with an updated special ed report at the same time.
So yeah, so one thing we did, Joe and myself did ask, they're going to be they're going to be looking at their the budget as they prepare. It's a couple months ago that they prepared that budget now, so we are going to be looking at that, Mike.
Perfect.
Okay,
Obviously.
yeah, so if you can bring details next week, that would be good.
Yeah, because that's a good place we're going to have to keep an eye on as well, now that we have that contingency, which is good.
And Mike, if you want me to touch on the other fund from the municipal side, Heidi is doing a phenomenal job tracking every penny that we spend that's COVID related, and we're matching it up to every possible grant funding source that makes sense, and getting the most value. There's a lot of moving parts right now. Some FEMA expenses are being allowed at 100% now, versus the 75, but not all. The rules change on a regular basis. I happened to walk into her office when she was on the phone with FEMA, and I don't know how she does it.
Nobody knows how she does it.
It is. And listen, and I have to say, the folks from FEMA are very helpful, and they're trying to help, but they're dealing with highly complex definitions and algorithms and the types of documentation they need, et cetera. So I guess at this point, I mean, will there at the end of the day be some COVID expenses that won't get covered by a grant or some other fund? Probably, but to the extent it can be covered by the regular operating budget, we won't know yet, and we just won't know how much we're talking. But I don't think there's any huge exposures at this point in time. It seems like we're doing pretty good as relates to keeping on top of all the again, trying to tap into all those other sources. So,
and again, Ken, that's a great point, because that was the next thing on my list, was kind of this kind of unknown on the American Revenue Act and all these things. So if you want to touch on that too, because that was the next thing, is like, what do we have expectations for revenue?
Yeah, I can. So, I mean, what I was referring to before was, FEMA, there's a handful of very specific grants that came in for social services, public health. Then we had the Coronavirus Relief Fund that got established through the CARES Act. So that's what I was talking about before. The American Rescue Plan is significantly more funds. I think I highlighted the informed estimates that we were given at the last regular meeting. At this point, we're still awaiting guidance from the U.S. Treasury. I did get communication from OPM this week that they are in touch with the Treasury, and as soon as they have information, they will be there to assist us in the guidance in terms of what will be allowable and what the certification process will be, et cetera. But at this point, we continue to have really just those very broad categories available to us. So we'll keep, we'll keep letting you know if any more information arises. I'm hoping we get some clarity before, certainly before you're done with, before your charter date expires here.
That would be nice, because obviously if this revenue is coming in and it has specific parameters, it could affect what we budget, or some of the increases we might be able to mitigate with that.
Yep, and I've made it clear in all the conversations I'm having with state or federal officials that time is of the essence in terms of getting this information. But I'm sure they're probably somewhat at the mercy of the U.S. Treasury at this point.
Yes, they cut the check. They just didn't tell us what to spend it on yet. I get it. All right.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, Ron.
I didn't want to jump in and I just wanted to ditto what Ken said on the, as far as the expense management, the COVID expense management. On the board side, it's pretty much the same thing. Anything that we were able to cover with grants. Obviously, there's still expenditures. It might be masks that have to be worn by the basketball team or whatever. We're segregating those expenses. Obviously, we'll try to either get them covered by one of the grants or absorb them in the budget. And if we can't, then, we'll be coming to talk with you.
Steve Kirsch, I've got a question both, I guess, for Ron and Ken. For all of these things, the grants and the other things, the CARES Act and so forth, do we just have a basic list of the kinds of things that are being covered and where those things would be in the budget? I mean, I'm not even interested necessarily so much in terms of dollars, but just the kinds of line items in either the Board of Ed quote unquote normal budget or the town side normal budget that are getting funds. I mean, I'd be interested in just seeing a list if such a list exists.
Yeah, we could certainly work on. I mean, I know that Heidi is keeping very copious, detailed tracking of everything, with the intention that we can provide a pretty granular detail of what was covered and by what grants. But because it is moving constantly, it's just been very hard to nail down. But I can just tell you from my off the top of my head, I mean, it's a wide range of things. A lot of it is staff. So our Community Economic Recovery Coordinator, there was some additional, there might be some overtime for very specific departments that were allowed to charge overtime to one of these grants or to FEMA. Some of the supplies, some of the PPE, probably the majority of it, although there have been some kind of interesting rules that came up at one point where, you could only cover the PPE that was actually deployed and used, not the PPE that's still in the cabinet. So those things came up. There's some technology expenses related to conducting remote meetings that had to be, infrastructure that had to be done. There's supplies, that kind of a thing. I don't know, Heidi, am I missing any like really large category that that you can think of off the top of your head, outside of kind of getting that report together?
Like all the sneeze guard barriers.
Oh yeah.
The town, all the
Yep.
office modifications for it.
Right.
The health department office modification.
Right.
Um,
Again, yeah, a lot of infrastructure stuff.
just the PPE and any sanitary measures that were taken, any types of signage for social distancing.
Although even signage, I mean, we got a significant amount of signage donated by Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. So it's another, we don't even have a dollar amount on that. That was just an in-kind contribution where they offered to print up a certain allotment of signage and we took them up on it. Sorry, Heidi. I mean,
Yeah, and then the modification in chambers too, or
Right.
remote.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much all the barriers were part of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So do you want to address some of the expenditures on the board side, or do you want me to just, I mean, there was a wide range of things, as you can imagine, in the schools that were required. Anywhere from upsizing some desks, which were covered just so the sneeze guards could fit on the desks, to tape for the hallways, to sneeze guards for the secretary stations, hand sanitizer. I'm sure there's a lot more. I know there's a lot more, and that's not even getting into the added staffing and nursing needs.
And I'm sure you probably had a lot of technology expenses. I mean, I failed to mention, like, anything from our online appointment system to, I mean, when we had a lot of remote workers, we temporarily got additional cell phones. They're not in use anymore, but there was a temporary increased cost there. We added some laptops and Chromebooks. for remote work, as well as for the vaccine clinics that required specific technology, kiosks for that. So a lot of technology costs. I'm sure Joe had as well. Probably more.
Absolutely, yeah, a
Probably
lot
more
of
than- probably
hardware,
more
a
so
lot
than
of,
we-
yeah, a lot of hardware, a lot of software programs to support remote learning for sure. On top of the
Cool.
PPE that Ron mentioned, the masks, the desk barriers on every student's desk, hand washing stations outside, in addition to the sanitizer, and then like Ron said, a lot of personnel to deal with staffing issues, especially during the fall.
Thank you.
All right, the last question I had was more on the fund area, because I don't know if I'm completely up to date, is where we are on the town aid roads, because I know that always comes up too. So again, I don't know if it's something we need to cover tonight, but I want to make sure that, we do spend some time talking about that funds and, what the intent, where we're at, what we expect,
We're
and if
pretty-
we're going to need any.
Yeah, we're in pretty good shape there, but we can bring that to another meeting.
Yeah, I just think, I know we usually are in good shape there, but I want to, make sure we're figuring what the plan is with that going forward. I know we've been lucky in the last couple of years not to have any huge snow issues or that kind of stuff that we've been able to deal with.
Well, I'm thankful that March was pretty mild because we were not trending well for the first half of the winter because they were not necessarily big events, but they were long duration events, and it was a real they were costly, but it seems like we seem to be in a pretty good place going into the winding down the season. Now that I said that, we'll probably get a blizzard.
Yeah, exactly. I shouldn't have asked you this question for a couple of weeks.
You're right, right.
Tornado.
But yeah, but Tar, I mean, for Town Aid Road, we always had set aside, even with the road plan last year, we had set aside enough to be our buffer to snow. We're probably not going to have to use that. Plus, I do expect that there'll be another TAR appropriation by the State Bonding Commission. So that will add to it, and we have various things. I think you see in the operating budget various uses of TAR, but we can we can definitely get you a size up of where it all ends at the end.
Yeah, I think that's really what I'm looking for, is just understanding how much is budgeted, how much is our contingency plan, which is TAR.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Excellent. All right. That was pretty much all I had on the high level stuff. Now, again, I'm not of the inclination to call in every department and go through line by line, because that never seems to work that well. But I did want to kind of just take the pulse of the board and see who is it that we think we may need to talk to, where we have issues. Obviously, the assessor comes in with us, late in the process to work on the mill rate. But if there's any other specific areas that we know we're going to want to dive in deeper on or have questions on, or we can direct them to Ken at this point. And if we don't get answers we want to go further on, we can certainly bring people in. But I'm trying to also keep the town employees as home as they can be. I'm sure they've had a rough year too. So if we don't need to bother them, I think we all agreed a couple of weeks ago that we probably got as much detail as we've ever had, and it's been vetted as good as it's ever been. But if there are particular areas we want to hit, I'm happy to entertain those.
So, Mike, this is Steve Kirsch, Board of Finance. I would make 2 requests of the first selectman through him to the Public Works. When it comes to roads, I'd like to get a list of what roads were done in 2020, and I'd like to get the plan for calendar year 2021 and the first half of 2022 for what's on tap. Obviously, we've got, I think it was like $3 million in the budget, but I'm interested in
I was
seeing
going to say, I'm assuming that
what we're doing.
that budget has backup to go with the priority of the road kind of
Yes.
thing.
It does.
wasn't in
It does. It was when the council did their workshop and had a DPW session, we had a document that was presented to them. We can certainly go over that with the Board of Finance. It probably hasn't changed a whole lot since then, but I'll double check and make sure Chris doesn't have any further revisions, but we can certainly.
So council went through the road plan and stuff?
Yes.
I missed that meeting, Ken, so I apologize, but if you
All right.
could just even stick it in the mail, in an email to the Board
Yeah,
of
it's a great
Finance
idea.
members,
I mean,
think
I don't
that
mind
would
looking
be-
it over. Again,
That would be great.
it's always it's a big number, so it's something we should look at for sure. Okay,
Absolutely.
what else, Steve? You said 2. That was 1.
Well, no, it was 2 requests. It was
Oh, only 1 area. Okay, cool.
the one area.
Yeah, I was
For the
giving you
town
another bite at the apple.
Sure.
And not at this moment.
Yeah, I guess I'll just give you just a preface on that, since you're going to get it in email, and fairly happy to answer any questions or have Chris Nowacki answer any questions at a subsequent meeting. But when you see that, probably the biggest change is that we had East Village Road planned for sectional kind of milling and paving in just certain spots in the current fiscal year. That was based upon the PCI condition at the time. And Public Works will routinely, they go out every year and they make sure that nothing has changed dramatically that would make an obvious change to the PCI that just wouldn't have gotten captured in between the 4-year cycles. And East Village Road is one of those that they told me has significantly been impacted, has a much lower PCI than is currently reported, based upon a lot of drainage issues and road deterioration that did not exist prior. So you'll see that East Village was not done and is not being done the current fiscal year, and the plan incorporates a full cold in place replacement of the entire stretch in the next fiscal year. So it's probably the most expensive road we would plan on doing next fiscal year instead.
Yeah, because it didn't have a particularly good
Okay.
PCI to begin with.
Right.
Anybody else? John, what do you got on your list?
Hi, Mike. John Oszewski, Vice Chair. Oh, sorry. There we go. I had to dial in on the phone because I was getting a lot of delays off my computer, so apologies for that.
No problem.
I went through everything in the budget like we do every year. I didn't see any reason to call anyone in particular in for any additional detail. I think town council did a good job going through departments and questioning things. As I said at the last meeting, I think that what we've been presented with is very comprehensive, is very thorough. Folks have done a really good job putting their information together. Joe, you weren't on the call last week, but I want to compliment you and all your team as well, and all the information that was put together for the budget. It makes it very easy to review, and it's very consistent year over year. So thank you for all the effort that went into that. It's very obvious there was a lot of effort put in. But yeah, no, other than listen to Board of Ed next week, I didn't have anything high on my list that I had to worry about or have any questions about.
Okay. That was kind of my feeling too as well, but that's great. I'm glad that somebody else felt the same way, because I thought I was missing something big. Okay, good. Well, let's keep going through. Rebecca, anything on your list?
I was the same. So it's a very good, presentation of material. So I did not have anything that I was questioning that needed, to call anybody in.
Okay. Dane?
No, almost. I think everyone already pretty much covered. We talked about roads a little bit, and I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. Donna?
No, I'm the same. I was expecting to see anything kind of glaring or outstanding, but nothing. And it's very well composed, written, and I have no comment.
All right.
Thank you all.
Yeah, no, I mean, kudos, Ken. I mean, really, it is. I mean, I've been through it a couple times, and I, wrote a few notes, and Ron answered most of my questions pretty quickly. It was mostly just me. But I think that's great. I think as we get updates on all these numbers, I think it'll help us all. And I think obviously we're going to spend, a decent amount of time with the Board of Ed, especially on some of their unknowns, which we've always done well with. But I think having the funds as a backup now will help us as well there. So, it'll help us cover some of those unknowns and not be as concerned as I typically am with some of their numbers there. But if we can get some updates next week, that would be great. Ken, I'm going to revert back to you. Is there anything else that you think we need to dive into further or, want to bring to our attention or have changed since you kind of put this together?
Hey, there is one thing I would like to bring up, and before I do that, I just want to acknowledge the team. I appreciate all your collective kind words, but this is very much a team effort, and I greatly appreciate the hard work of our department heads, and particularly I got a special thanks to Heidi and Ron because they work incredibly long hours while we put all this stuff together. So my thanks to them. The one thing I wanted to bring up that I'm sure you'll get to at some point, but maybe just in terms of making sure it's on your punch list, so to speak, is that I think you may want to revisit the ECS grant. I budgeted in the ECS state grant a reduction of about $176,000. That was based upon an informed estimate. At the time, we were, Monroe is one of the communities that's in this ECS kind of multi-year reduction plan where they kind of chip away at it for several years until it gets to a level that they wanted to ultimately have it arrive at. In subsequent to that, to my budget going out, the governor, when he released his proposed budget to the legislature, he basically kept all of the ECS levels did not go. No one was reduced down to their prior year fund levels. So obviously that is a proposal. The legislature has to act on it, but depending upon our confidence level of that, we could certainly talk more as time goes on, but that would, certainly that would be another $176,000 of revenue that we're currently not, we're not capturing in the operating budget.
No, that's a great point. And where are they at with their budget? I mean, when do we think do you think we'll get better numbers in the next few weeks, or are they going to do what they usually do and finish 2 weeks after we do?
I have not gotten there's been a lot of other bills that have been kind of flying all over email and a lot of public hearings, and I have not heard a recent discussion on the biennial budget bill. But I will continue to ask.
Okay, good. No, I appreciate that because obviously those can make big differences in our final calculations. All right. Does anybody have anything else we want to cover tonight before we call it an early evening?
Mike, I'd just like to, since the superintendent is here, and we're going to do Board of Ed next week, I will put something in writing, but I'm interested in a couple of things during the discussions with them. One, or a few things. One is the increase in enrollment over projection. As someone who watches the Board of Ed meetings, I know we're running well above previous projections. So I want to understand the latest in that. I'd like to understand the latest in special ed enrollment compared to where they were when they finalized their budget in January. And the third item, I'm not sure the best way to describe it, but let me call it a 3 or 5 year plan. in the superintendent's original presentation, he highlighted items that had been reduced from this year's school budget and which was being put back in to next year's, and he had information for the following year. Then when the Board of Ed finalized their budget request, they added back a couple of other items, and that didn't make up the whole list. So I'm interested in seeing what was remaining from the, if I will, the cut list from this year. And the other thing is there was a presentation that contained like capital items and other purchases, not just technology, but equipment that was laid out over, I think it was 5 years. And I'd be interested in seeing what that updated plan looks like.
You got it, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. That's it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. All right. Anybody have anything else we want to cover? Hearing none, someone want to make a motion?
Steve Kirsch, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Second.
Thank you all. We'll see you at the same time next week.